Hi, and welcome to Second Act Stories. Every 2 weeks, we share a profile of a courageous individual pursuing a better life in a second act. I'm Scott Merritt, your host today. Now, this is usually where my partner Andy Levine would introduce himself, but he's away right now on a whirlwind trip with his family for a few weeks, so I thought while he's away, let's do something fun. Now, I didn't join Second Act Stories until 2021 when Andy had almost 100 episodes under his belt. Now, I love to explore the incredible stories he produced early on, so I decided I would dig into the vault and bring you one of my favorites, Cathy Heying from St. Paul, Minnesota. It's actually one of the first stories that Andy profiled 4 years ago. This one will move you. Cathy was a social worker who identified a problem among the working poor in her community. When someone's car broke down, it meant they couldn't get to work. And then when they couldn't get to work, they would lose their jobs. And when they would lose their jobs, they couldn't pay their rent. And then when they couldn't pay their rent, they'd eventually become homeless. And sometimes they'd even be forced to live in their broken down cars. It's a vicious cycle that Cathy wanted to fix. And fix it she did. She enrolled herself in a technical college and became an auto mechanic. After graduation, she founded an extraordinary nonprofit called the Lift Garage, where she provides low-cost car repairs for people living below the poverty line in Minneapolis, St. Paul. This episode, titled Cathy and the Crankshafts, Social Worker Learns to Fix Cars for Working Poor, was originally released in October 2018, but it's no less inspiring today. Here's Cathy Heying's second act story.
But then it was like the voice of the universe, God, however you choose to name it. It was just like, my God swears, so again, forgive my language, but it was just like, dumbass, the door is opening. Walk through it. I am opening the door. Walk through it.
Welcome to Second Act Stories, a podcast that looks at people who've made major career changes and are pursuing more rewarding lives in a second act. I'm your host, Andy Levine, and I am so excited and honored to share with you this week's story. Last month, I traveled to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I had the chance to visit with Cathy Heying, who is the founder of an extraordinary nonprofit called the Lift Garage. She is the voice referring to herself as dumbass in the opening quote. Here's a description of the organization's mission. The Lift Garage is a 501c3 nonprofit aimed to move people out of poverty and homelessness by providing low-cost car repair, free pre-purchase car inspections, and honest advice that supports our community on the road to more secure lives. Cathy started the Lift Garage in 2013. And what I love most about her story is the unusual, roundabout path to actually launching the organization. For anyone thinking about a second act, it's an inspiring story, and that's exactly the type of story we're always trying to tell here. Let's meet Cathy Heying of the Lift Garage. Where did you grow up? Tell me about your education,
Sure.
Just sort of the short elevator story about your background.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town in northeast Iowa, about 3 hours south of Minneapolis, town of 800 people, and youngest of 7 kids. I went to college in Dubuque, Iowa, Loras College. I have my bachelor's in social work with a minor in religious studies. I have a master's degree from St. Mary's University in Winona, Minnesota, in pastoral ministry.
What drew you to social work?
That's a great question. I was always a sensitive kid. My family likes to say that every childhood story ends with, and then Cathy cried. So I've always had a soft spot for humans and suffering, and really, really clear to me early on that I wanted to be a social worker.
Talk about the pastoral ministry side of this. Is it connected with any particular religion that you're working?
I grew up Roman Catholic, and that I went to a Catholic university, which is what my degree is in. So I spent some years doing youth and young adult ministry. And then I spent about 9 years working as the director of social justice for a Catholic church here in Minneapolis. My job, it was an amazing job, was to engage the faith community in working for systemic social change.
So you're doing this for a number of years. You said 9 years as director of social justice?
Exactly.
Take me through to the thinking of auto mechanic school, lift garage, sort of how you get to that,
Sure,
how that
absolutely.
thinking came about.
So it was during those 9 years, the shelter and other things are, right on the grounds of the church, and the church is located in a neighborhood that has a lot of high needs economically. So people were regularly coming to the church doors looking for financial assistance and often for car repairs. And so often the story was something like, I work full time, but I work second shift out in one of the distant suburbs. There's no bus that travels in that direction at 11 o'clock at night when I'm getting off. I need my car to get to work. The brakes went out. If I can't get them fixed, I'm not going to be able to get to work. I'm going to lose my job, and I'm going to lose my housing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Was there one particular episode, or you're just seeing this played out over and over and
over
again?
and over again? And we would help when we could, but I knew it was never really enough, and so it just, I kept thinking that, Minnesota is often joked about as being the land of 10,000 nonprofits, and but we didn't really have anything that was a full-time service that allowed people to get access to affordable car repair.
So Cathy took an unusual step to work on this problem. She enrolled in a 2-year program to become an auto mechanic.
I thought, I just can't let go of this idea. I was still paying off grad student school loans, and I was sort of done with school, and I was 38. But I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And it eventually became clear to me that I would regret it more if I didn't try something than if I tried something and it didn't work. So I went and checked out Dunwoody. It's a private tech school here in Minneapolis. I thought, well, I'm just going to go and visit. That doesn't mean I have to go, or no commitments. And so this was March of 2008, and I was sort of thinking like I would start in the fall of 2008. I'm like, plenty of time, just go visit. And then at the end of the tour, the program director said to me, well, if you, the program is almost full, so if you're at all serious, I'll need your application by tomorrow.
Tell me about the first couple of weeks in that program. I mean, I've read a few things that you were a bit of an odd duck in that class.
That is a true statement. It was mostly I just kept thinking, excuse my French, what in the hell have I done? I walk in the classroom, and so as I said, I was 38, and it's 40 18-year-olds, 2 other young women, but everybody was 18. Pretty quickly into the first day, they announced that we're going to have to partner up with somebody to be our lab partner for the rest of the semester. And we're sort of sitting in this U shape, and I'm at the end, and I can see them all mentally counting. Like you can just watch them. All their eyes are looking
no,
like...
not me.
Exactly. Like they were just like, what? Please don't let me get stuck with the old lady. But it was, I mean, I didn't know anything. At some point, they were like, okay, everybody line up and face that wall where all the crankshafts are. And I'm like, I have no idea what a crankshaft is or what it looks like. Or there's stuff on every wall, and any one of them could be a crankshaft to me. So I just kind of I'll just wait and see where everybody else turns. And, so it's just like that. And culturally it was, I'm coming out of this experience of social work and church ministry and feelings, and let's just talk. And, they're running automotive school like a boot camp because they're dealing with 18-year-old boys, and that's often what they respond to. So, I mean, they're only calling us by our last names. There's lots of barking and, get your safety glasses on, rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, can't we just talk about how the cars are feeling?
So do you think about quitting?
All the time.
Okay.
All the time. And especially in that first 2 to 3 months. I mean, and I cried more than I would care to admit in front of all those 18-year-old boys, but it was frustrating. I would be the very first to tell you I'm not a great tech. I have to work really, really hard at it. It does not come naturally to me.
Dave Duval was Cathy's first instructor at the Dunwoody College of Technology.
So you have seen a lot of students. Have you ever seen a student like Cathy before?
I have never seen a student like Cathy Heying before. No, I have not.
Tell me about the first time you met her and your reaction, and just tell me about that first meeting.
We had 22 students in there, and all of them were young and very rambunctious and just real eager to, work on cars, talking about how fast cars were going and what kind of car was their dream car, things of that nature. And in walks this lady with, longer hair and little gray to it, not much, but, very non-traditional, not what one is used to seeing coming into an automotive class. And I see her across the way and I'm going, well, this is going to be interesting. I really wanted her to succeed because I could tell she was determined, and we just hit it off like Forrest Gump would say, like peas and carrots. I mean, she put in effort like you wouldn't believe, and I love effort from anybody and everybody. And when I see effort, I give 110% back. So, the more questions she asked, the more I answered, and the better she did. And she just kept on plucking away a little bit at a time, and she just never quit. She was like a bulldog. She just worked her tail off.
It's funny you mentioned the word quit, because in my interview with Cathy, she shared that she was ready to quit the program like a dozen times.
And she did come to me in that first quarter back then, and she said, I just can't do this. And I said, I'm not going to let you quit. I said, I know it's hard, but I said, you can stay late. I'll work with you. And that's what we did. She stayed late, and I worked with her.
I asked Cathy what kept her going.
Kind of a mix of German stubbornness, a really strong belief that we have to address this problem. And at this moment in time, that nobody else seems to be doing it in a way that I think it needs to be done.
And of course, there was Dave Duval, who wouldn't let her quit.
I often think about, the old phrase, it's scripture-based, but we've adapted it in a variety of ways. But, always be aware, because you never know when you are entertaining angels. I walk into Dunwoody on that first day and I see this barking auto instructor who is just, rah, 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 knock it off. And I never would have guessed it. So this guy's going to be the one that gets me through this. And he did. And when I decided to put a board of directors together, he was one of the first people I called, and he joined the board of directors in 2012 and has been on the board since.
Take us through to the start of Lift Garage and how it evolved to what it is today.
Sure. So, I was, working full time and trying to think about kind of now what, okay? And so I was like, I'm not really sure what I need to do next, but I'm guessing other people might. So I took out a yellow legal pad, and on the left-hand side, I wrote down all the types of people that I thought I should talk to. So lawyers, city council people, shop owners, people who had started nonprofits, people who raise money for nonprofits, mechanics, on and on and on. Anybody that I thought might have a piece of wisdom or information or insight. And then on the right-hand side of the paper, I went and filled in names of people that I knew fit that description. And I just started taking people out for coffee. And, I got this degree. I see this need. I want to try to address this problem in some way. What do you think? So basically, from summer of 2010 till fall of 2011 or so, I had a lot of conversations and a lot of coffee. The beginnings of what's now the Lift Garage started to take shape, and by summer of 2012, we had our 501c3 status with the IRS.
And that's when Cathy got an important phone call from an acquaintance who had a business working on hybrid cars. The business had run into some problems, and they offered Cathy and her new nonprofit a bay to start repairing cars. But it was too early, and Cathy said no.
I was just like, no, absolutely not. Thank you. Yeah, I said, there are 1,001 things that we do not know. And we're probably a year and a half out from where we, from opening anything. And so we hung up, and holidays go by, and she calls back and says, no, I really think you should. And I said, I understand that's what you think. And the answer is still no, but thank you. I do appreciate your belief in us. And another 2 weeks goes by, and she calls again. I thought, this woman has nerve. But then it was like the voice of the universe, God, however you choose to name it. It was just like, my God swears, so again, forgive my language, but it was just like, dumbass, the door is opening. Walk through it. I am opening the door. Walk through it. So we started hustling, and so we signed a lease to start renting one bay, 1 day a week.
Take me through to the Lift Garage today, and how does Lift Garage work?
Sure. So our model has stayed the same since the beginning, which is we provide low-cost car repair for low-income folks, and we define low income for our purposes as 150% of federal poverty guideline. That translates to about $18,000 a year or less for a household of one, about $21,000 a year or less for a household of two, depends on family size. One thing that has been true of the Lift since the very beginning is pretty much within 2 months, we were booked out 3 months, and that has not changed.
Within 2 months have started?
Yes.
Wow. So give me the contrast. If I took a car to my local mechanic versus if I came here, what would be typically the difference in cost?
So market rate labor, hourly labor rate in the Twin Cities right now is about $110 an hour average. We charge $15 an hour for labor. Most shops will mark up the parts anywhere from 50 to 200%. We do not mark up the parts at all. So whatever we pay for the part is what the customer pays. So there's a lot of factors, but on average across the board, people end up paying here about a quarter of what they would have paid for the same repair in a traditional shop. So $25 that they'd have paid $100 somewhere else for.
In 2015, CNN told the Lift Garage story to a national audience, and they named Cathy Heying a CNN hero. And it led to dozens of phone calls from people all around the country wanting to start their own version of the Lift Garage. And Cathy is always ready to help.
My ultimate goal is to end poverty, wherever that is. And I'm not naive enough to think that the Lift Garage in and of itself is going to solve poverty all time. But it's like, when you look through that lens, it's like, then why would we not share everything we have learned with everybody who wants to know, so that we have a better chance of accomplishing that goal all over the place?
What's the most rewarding part of your work?
Well, there's something very rewarding about, you watch a car get towed in, and I work on it, or we work on it, and the customer comes and, pays us $100 for, the work, and drives away in their car. It's very tangible to be able to see the change that you have made very concretely in somebody's life in that way. That's amazing.
So let me take you in a different direction
Sure.
here for a moment. I want to see what sort of advice you would give to someone who was considering kind of a path that you went down here in terms of starting their own nonprofit. Well, trying to do something positive and starting a nonprofit, that sort of thing. You've done this for 5 years now. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about this?
Depends on the day. Some days I'd be like, run far away.
Don't do
it. I just like to remind people or tell people that you can change your life in amazing ways that don't necessarily require you starting your own nonprofit. I mean, you know, and people are like, I could never do that. I can't. So number one, stop thinking I can't, because you can. It might be really different work than the work you're doing now, but it might not require a major shift in your skill set or your, the type of work you do. So you're a lawyer. So great. You can still be a lawyer and go be a lawyer at Legal Aid, or, start by volunteering at a free legal clinic in your neighborhood, or, if there is no free legal clinic in your neighborhood, hey, go to your local community center or a synagogue or a church or something and say, hey, mind if I set up a table here once a week and advertise free legal advice for low-income folks from 4 to 6 every Thursday? I mean, try it out. You don't have to drop everything and go do that. And
so sort of test the waters, start small,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And
unlike deciding to go to mechanic school for 2 years.
Exactly.
You've been very generous with your time. I just want to look at one aspect of something you've mentioned a couple of times, and I'm just interested in the spiritual side of this.
Sure.
Do you feel like this is almost like your vocation, the way a priest or a nun would get called to that vocation?
Totally. I do. For me, that's where it comes from. That said, that's hugely important to me. For me personally, that's what fuels me. I have a belief that we are put on this earth to care for one another, to live in community, to tend to one another. Again, I don't think that anything that I have done is all that remarkable. I've worked hard. I'm not negating that. I've made unusual life choices. All of that is true. At the core of it is I'm doing the one part that I feel like I can do, that I feel like I've been called to do, to help take care of my neighbors. And thank God there are all sorts of people out there who are doing things that help take care of me in different ways. If we start shifting our lens to think about this more of how do we take care of one another with whatever skills we have or inclination or calling, everything would be different.
It was such an incredible experience for me to sit down and visit with Cathy Heying and her team at the Lift Garage. 10 years ago, Cathy saw a problem. She watched people spiral into poverty when their cars broke down. And she said, somebody should do something about this. And eventually she said, gee, maybe that somebody is me. You can learn more about the mission of the Lift Garage at www.theliftgarage.org. And if their story moves you, don't hesitate to click on the donate button on their website and help support them. Got a second act story we should profile? Well, then contact me, that's Andy Levine, and I'm at secondactstories@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're thinking of starting your own second act, we hope Cathy's story will help you find a new path. As Cathy shared earlier in the podcast, stop thinking that you can't because you can. We hope you'll keep listening. A new second act story is just around the corner.